Welcome to Pearls for Success. I am Anita Parhar, and I work with children, parents, and staff in schools. This show is dedicated to those of you who are new to Canada. Each episode, we will be talking about different issues related to health, education, finance, and law. And this is my co-host.
Hello, my name is Gurdeep Parhar, and I'm a family doctor. We really hope you enjoy these episodes. We hope you learn about pearls that will help your life and the lives of your family members. We'd love to also hear from you. If you have comments about today's episode, or you have suggestions for future episodes, please contact us through our webpage, www.pearlsforsuccess.com. Before we go to today's episode, I'd like to share some information from our sponsors. So Anita, what's the topic for today?
Today's topic is anxiety.
That's a fantastic topic. You know, people often think about that they are anxious or that they're worried or they don't sleep because they're worried. But I don't know if people truly understand what an anxiety disorder or an anxiety illness is.
Yes, I completely agree. We know of people who are anxious when they drive. They're anxious during a job interview. And in schools, we've noticed that kids are more and more becoming anxious writing tests, anxious doing their work, worried about what they're going to do when they get home. And so it's becoming an issue. So shall we look at a role play?
Sure. So in this role play, there's a patient who's seeing a psychologist, Dr. Thinda. And what's happening is that the patient has some symptoms of anxiety, and Dr. Thinda is trying to explore it and understand it better. So let's go to the role play and see how it plays out.
Hi, Brian. My name's Dr. Thinda.
Hi.
Okay. So I do have some information in terms of the information I have on file, but I wanted to start by just asking you sort of what's been going on.
It's my nerves. I can't calm down, and I just get nervous all the time. I need to calm down.
Okay, okay. How has your body been responding? Describe to me sort of what you mean by I need to calm down.
I don't know. That's why I'm here, right? You tell me.
Okay, okay. So what does your body do when you feel nervous?
Oh, I keep shaking, and I get sweaty sometimes, and I'm thirsty. I just feel that people are watching me all the time. I need to calm down. I have to calm down.
Okay. When did you first notice this stuff?
Well, it's been like this for a while now. At first, it was at work, and my boss treats us like dirt, and my supervisor doesn't do anything, and when I try to complain, someone told on me.
Okay.
Backstabbers.
Okay. So the workplace incident, that probably is where a lot of this started to get worse, is that right?
Work is one thing, and at home, I just can't seem to be concentrating.
Okay.
And when I try to get it out of my system, I try to go to the gym.
Okay.
I try to exercise and help myself, but suddenly, out of nowhere, I just freaked out, and I was shaking, and I'm pretty sure everyone's looking at me, and they were laughing at me, and I felt like a fool.
Okay, okay. You know, what you're describing is what we typically call kind of a panic attack, basically. Have you heard the word panic attack before?
No, I haven't.
Okay. It can be a very scary feeling, but just so you know, it's not that you're, medically in danger, physiologically anything's happening, but it does feel quite intense. The things you're describing, and overall, I think, with the work stress and some of the other things you've said, it sounds like if we take sort of an approach in terms of treating this anxiety, treating this panic that you're having, relaxation skills, just looking at your situation, what the triggers are, things like that, we should be able to help you. It's something that is quite treatable.
Well, is there a pill for that?
A pill?
Yes, a pill.
Medications, they are one route, right? But I think initially what is always a good idea, and I'm happy that your family doctor has sent you here first, is pills can sometimes be a very sort of quick solution, a short-term solution. So I'm thinking that it's better to maybe develop ways you can address this yourself. And then over time, I mean, if the need at a later time is that we need to look at medications, we can. But I think at this time, it's probably a good idea to just develop some good strategies. And you know what? You're going to do fine. You'll be able to get rid of this.
Okay, I guess so.
Okay?
All right.
Okay.
Well, that was quite complicated. It seems that Brian, the patient in the role play, was really struggling with a lot of stuff.
Yes, he seemed to be focusing on his job situation and not recognizing what he was doing.
What did you think about his wanting a pill?
That was interesting. He thought that, like you said, it wasn't very complicated and that it could easily be solved by taking a pill, when in fact there may be other issues that he's going through and other treatment options that he could undergo.
So we had the opportunity to speak to Dr. Thinda. You spoke to him.
I spoke to Dr. Thinda, and he talked about anxiety and gave some very wise advice. So let's go to Dr. Thinda and see what he has to say. Hi, today we're here with psychologist Dr. Sundeep Thinda, and he's a psychologist that works in both Surrey and Burnaby. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Today we're going to talk about anxiety. Now, in the schools that I work, not the latest, but what's been recently really recognized are kids who are anxious and parents who are anxious. And I've talked to a lot of school counselors, and in Delta, one of the programs that they're working on is looking at social emotional development to try to help kids and parents understand anxiety.
Right.
So can you tell us, what is anxiety?
So just a basic definition of anxiety would be anytime we feel threatened, we feel that we're unable to handle a situation, we're going to lose control of a situation. That threat, that type of situation usually will cause some type of physical symptom. And usually that physical symptom then psychologically is what we refer to as anxiety. It's a sort of a sense of urgency, a sense of feeling unsteady, unsettled.
Okay. Is there a difference between feeling stressed and being anxious?
That's a great question. The best way I would answer that is if you have an accumulation of stress. So stress is it can be the small things, the everyday, paying the bills, picking the kids up from school, going to school if you're a child, right? All of these things can be stresses. When they accumulate and they almost become too much, they're too much to handle. They feel like you feel overburdened with them. That's where anxiety is more an appropriate term than to use.
Okay.
Yes.
And how would anxiety manifest itself? If I was anxious, what might I look like or what might I do?
Yeah, so like most disorders within the psychological world, anxiety, the best way to break it up is usually by talking about, so physically, the physical symptoms are going to be everything from people feeling a little bit jittery, a little bit unsteady, heart rate usually going up a little bit. Sometimes there's some changes in our breathing. We might feel, a little bit hard to sit in one place or something along those lines. So there is some type of increase in activity in the body.
Right.
So that's the physical. Thinking-wise, sometimes people will fear, for example, talking in front of public. Most people have anxiety, but then it goes away. If it doesn't go away, that's where anxiety is then a disorder, right? So this whole fear of anxiety, fear of having, let's say, a panic attack, which sometimes happens with people who have anxiety, the thought process around it then also help us to define anxiety. So that's the physical, the thinking. You've got the behavioral stuff. So are you avoiding situations now because you fear anxiety? And so for children, stomach aches often come up as a reason they don't want to go to school. They may not have a stomach ache. They might just be anxious because of, could be bullying, could be not doing well in one of their classes. So oftentimes you have to look at sort of what is happening behaviorally. Why are they avoiding? Because if it's a threat, I don't want to be facing that threat. Okay, so we talked about the thinking, talked about the behavioral, talked about overall the physical changes that happen. So the last one would be emotional. And so emotionally, if an individual is anxious more times than not in the day, usually we see some symptoms that are very similar to other disorders like depression, for example. There's a sadness. There's, with anxiety, there's a fear oftentimes, a fear of the unknown, a fear of what may come up, a fear of what I'm not ready for. So this fear, this sadness, Sometimes if it's for a very long period and the person doesn't know how to control the anxiety, it can turn into like a hopelessness.
Right, right. And so we've talked about stress and anxiety. What about being nervous? Is that associated with anxiety?
Yeah, if we put it all on a scale, if anxiety is over on this more severe end,
Right.
when it's getting more of a becoming a severe problem, I would say nervousness is more on the lighter side. So nervousness is what me doing an interview with cameras rolling. That's going to be a little bit of nervousness. If one cannot get themselves to even enter a building, to come upstairs to do something,
Right.
that would be more of an anxiety.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, are there some common anxieties that you would say that people may have, but may not know that that's really what they have, is being anxious?
Well, I mean, social anxiety is a very common anxiety, and that's where people will actually avoid any situation where they have to go see groups of people. And, most people feel a little bit nervous if you have to do a toast at your friend's wedding, or if you have to do a small speech in front of a group of colleagues or something. That's normal nervousness people would experience. But if you are then regularly avoiding any situation like that, so the average person might try and get out of that type of situation, but if you're not even going to the family get-together because there's going to be too many people there, and is too many 5, is too many 10, is too many 12? That all varies, but it's just looking at the behavior and seeing if a person's starting to cut down the amount that they're interacting with others. Yeah.
And so if that's the case, what can one do about that?
So if you feel that anxiety is a problem for you, if you feel like you are avoiding situations, or you're thinking about anxiety more times than not, that's always a good way to judge whether something's a problem. Is it always on my mind? And if anxiety is on your mind, or you don't like the way you feel in situations, oftentimes you feel anxious. Once again, family physician's always a good first place to start. If the family physician deems that it is something serious enough that they need to refer you to another specialist, like a psychologist, a counselor, a psychiatrist, something like that, they can make that decision. Oftentimes, if it's just nervousness like we were talking about, a lot of it is just exposure, and that's one of the things we use to treat it as well, is the more you get used to a situation, the better it's going to feel. But the problem is with anxiety, we don't even get close to the situation, and that's part of where psychological treatment comes in.
I wanted to ask you about a common problem that I know some people have, and it has to do with sleep and not being able to go to sleep. Now, when I think about it, I don't think that's nervousness, nor is it really stress. So what would you classify that as?
I'd probably classify it more as stress. The reason being, and I'll give you an example, is usually when we go to bed, one of the first things our brain does is kind of do a mental checklist of how was my day, what things do I have to worry about for tomorrow, what things do I need to do. And so it's kind of like that light level worry about those things that sometimes, if there are certain things, like let's say, mortgage payments that somebody's having difficulty with, or difficulty with raising your kids, or if you're a child or a younger, an adolescent, maybe it's marks, school, maybe it's friends or something like that. But usually what happens is, when you go to bed, if you have a lot on your mind, chances are they're going to kind of run around in your mind, and you're going to be thinking about it, and oftentimes that's enough for someone to not be able to sleep. Okay. A quick strategy I tell people is 10 minutes before sleeping, just think about, just with a piece of paper, just think about what's your to-do list for tomorrow. If you just make your to-do list for tomorrow, or some of the big things you're going to be doing, I guarantee you half the worries that you have when you go to bed, because that's essentially what we're doing. Right. What do I have to do tomorrow? What are the things that are on my plate? If you can kind of put that on paper, for some reason, unconsciously when we go to bed, my brain thinks, I just did that. It's already there. I don't have to worry about it. And so you're able to fall asleep. That's just one strategy. Okay. But usually it's the stresses of our life, I think, that get to us. Okay. Yeah.
And if I go back to talking about kids and parents in schools, you've talked about strategies. What are some strategies, other strategies that they may be able to use to decrease anxiety?
The biggest thing I recommend to people is relaxation. And it's not relaxation the way we typically use it in the English language. So it's not just lay on the couch and watch TV. That's not what relaxation is. Relaxation is physiological relaxation. How do I actually bring my blood pressure down, my heart rate down? How do I bring my breathing, respiration rate at a normal level? And the way you do that is, by relaxing, by doing deep breathing. There's deep breathing exercises that these days you can learn on the internet. You can ask your physician, your psychologist. A lot of people have some knowledge, very similar to what they do in yoga, what they do in different Eastern types of martial arts and things. So getting into deep breathing, meditation for some people, things like yoga, but even just exercise itself. Whether you have a lack of energy, you know, you have to expend energy to make energy. Same thing, you sometimes expend energy and it allows the body to relax even more afterwards.
Right.
So relaxation, getting the body physiologically calmed is probably the most important piece.
Now, I'm wondering, who's at risk of getting an anxiety disorder?
So anxiety disorders, like a lot of other types of psychological disorders like depression, anybody can really develop an anxiety disorder.
Okay.
Now, certain populations, again, in this case, you know, individuals that are faced with a lot of danger. So let's say that we're talking about some of the more severe types of anxiety disorders, like post-traumatic stress disorder or something. So individuals who are, you know, firefighters or police officers or individuals in the line of some type of dangerous work, or that are just living in an area where there's a lot of danger. So a lot of people that in Canada, we see a lot of people immigrating from other countries who are coming from some pretty tough situations, right?
Right.
So as an adult, I think anytime you're coming from a situation where there's a higher level of threat to either yourself or to loved ones, there's usually a higher chance of developing some kind of an anxiety disorder. On the other side, it's, when I say anyone, I mean children often, anxiety is a common thing that they develop. If it's anxiety around doing well in school, if parents are really expecting that, and maybe the child doesn't have the resources to actually improve, but there's just this expectation, that can cause anxiety. I think overall, anxiety is one of the more common things that actually affect people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there different types of anxiety?
So I was referring to post-traumatic stress disorder. That's more when there's a big trauma in an individual's life and the anxiety that develops after that. There's just common phobias. And if you think about, you know, most people are on some level afraid of a snake, right? And evolutionarily speaking, that makes sense because a snake could be dangerous, it could be poisonous. But it doesn't make sense to have a phobia of, let's say, driving. These days we need to drive, we need to get around to different places. But what happens after a person's been in a car accident? Oftentimes there is a little bit of a phobia that develops. And if it's severe enough, or if a person, you know, is already an anxious person or something, sometimes that can develop into a full-blown phobia. And a phobia is essentially an unbelievably high level of anxiety, of panic that occurs when you're faced with that stimulus. So for example, if it's car driving, for me to get in the car and drive with someone, the anxiety is just way too strong. I can't do it. And so in treatment then, part of the treatment would be, how do you slowly take steps in integrating a person back into the activity that makes them phobic, that makes them so anxious.
Right.
Obsessive compulsive disorder is another one that people often associate with the whole world of anxiety, and that's where obsessive means thoughts, not being able to stop certain thoughts, and usually it's around safety, so people are constantly checking the locks on their doors, they're constantly making sure everything's secure. Or it could be an example of the compulsive part is actually action. So that's more actions, right? The safety would be the obsession, and then the actions would be the compulsive behavior is the locking. Germ phobias. So with germ phobias, people are constantly washing their hands, making sure everything's absolutely clean. Their life becomes consumed by it, and that's why it's a disorder. It's all that one can think about, and that's what basically classifies an anxiety disorder or a specific types of anxiety disorders.
Right, right. Yeah, I know some people who have to have things in the right spot all the time, and if something is moved, it's bothering them, and they're fixated on.
And a little bit of that's okay, and that's
Yeah.
where we always distinguish. It has to be a problem that's functionally occurring. Is it keeping you from your daily activities? Is it keeping you from the things you want to be doing? That's where it becomes a disorder. The people that just like, you know, their things on their desk to be in a certain way. That's idiosyncratic way of dealing with their world. I think it's more specific when I completely lose all sense of what I was doing because something's been moved on my desk.
Right.
That's more of an anxiety problem.
That's an excellent example.
Yeah.
Right, right. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Dr. Thinda made some really interesting points in that interview with you.
He did. He covered the symptoms and also discussed treatment options.
I think people being aware of both of those things should be functioning better if they have any of these symptoms.
Indeed. So let's take a look at another role play and see how Dr. Thinda's advice translates into practice.
Hi, Brian. How you doing?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. Nice to see you again. So let's start with, we've seen each other a couple of times now, and I wanted to know between last week and this week, how have things been?
I feel great. I've been getting lots of sleep now.
Good.
I tried the sleeping exercise where you breathe right before you sleep, and I was able to get some rest.
So the deep breathing that we went over last week?
Yep.
Okay. So the nice thing about that is, like we talked about, if you can bring your arousal levels down, if you can bring the sort of the relaxation response, right? It works against the stress response that your body's been having. Essentially what you've been doing then is just calming yourself down enough that it lets you fall asleep. So that's really good.
Makes sense.
Sleep is actually one of the things I wanted to touch on today, because one of the things last week you mentioned a few times was that just the worry, the thoughts you can't stop at night, right? And that you keep worrying at night. So one of the strategies I wanted to give you is I want you to, half hour, 45 minutes before falling asleep, I'd like you to start worrying.
Worrying? You want me to worry?
Yes, and I knew you'd have that kind of a reaction. I mean, essentially what I mean to say is sit down with a piece of paper, right, and go through the things that are on your mind, your to-do list, the different things that you need to strategize about, decision-making, problem-solving, anything like this. And just write it all out.
So like a to-do list, right?
It's a to-do list, but I want you to be a little bit more active with it and actually, use the space to also problem-solve things you need to do related to it. Essentially what that does is it gives the brain the message when you go to bed that I don't need to keep worrying about this stuff. First of all, it's on a piece of paper, so I can go back to it. I'm not going to forget it. But then the second thing is you've actually thought about it, and the brain in some ways thinks, okay, now I don't need to think about it. I already worried about it.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's one strategy that often helps. And
I would try that.
Yeah, good. So overall, is there anything else that has still been bothersome for you or that you're finding is difficult through the week?
Well, sometimes I still feel that there might be people watching me, and I still feel not as confident.
Okay.
But things has been getting a lot better now.
Okay, good. One of the things, this confidence and the having that worry that other people are looking at you, it's one of the triggers that's probably happening that causes you to start to feel anxious. And what you want to do is talk to yourself through that. Okay. Have you had any panic attacks? How have your anxiety levels been on that 0 to 10 scale?
Well, I would say it's around 2 to 3.
On the lower end of the anxiety?
Right.
Good.
But sometimes I still worry about freaking out.
Having the panic attack.
Right.
Okay. What you're talking about is very classic, because after a while, it's not really your stress that's causing the panic attack anymore. Now it's actually your worry about the actual panic. And then you start to worry, I'm going to have a panic attack. Then your anxiety goes up, and then that causes you to get more panicked, and it becomes this cycle of thoughts and body arousal. The positive self-talk I was just referring to, that's an excellent time to do it as well. And essentially what it means is stop yourself and actually think about what's going on. Remind yourself, I've been able to control this anxiety in other situations, that I can do it right now. Do the deep breathing, distract yourself, do some of these things that we've tried, but just be active with it. That's very important.
I see. Based on my experience at the gym a few weeks ago, should I be getting back to the gym?
Exercise is great overall. Given that that's where your anxiety attack, the panic attack first happened, I think it actually might not be a bad idea. If you feel comfortable with this, it'd probably be a good idea for us to actually have maybe our next session at the gym.
Well, that role play seemed to go quite a bit better. It was interesting that Brian was a lot more cooperative with the treatment plan.
He seemed to be a lot more open, and he seemed to be more aware of his own situation and his anxiety than he did before.
What did you think of those treatments, breathing exercises?
Yeah, those seem to be working out for him. And I'm sure there's a lot more work to be done with Brian, but he's on his way to accepting and trying these treatment options. And I don't think he's into the, I need one pill will solve my problem kind of approach now.
And those treatment options don't seem really, really complicated, but they seem to be having some good effects. So things like the breathing exercises, and there was also writing things down.
That's right, clearing his mind before he went to sleep. Those are strategies that he's using.
Let's summarize what Dr. Thinda then taught us today.
That sounds great. First, Be aware of the symptoms of anxiety. Be aware of people around you. Be aware of yourself. Watch for them. And second, if you find that you are anxious, seek out help. You can go see a counselor, you can see your family physician, and of course you can see a psychologist. And third, once you've found a healthcare provider, sit down with the healthcare provider and discuss a plan of action. Also, be dedicated to the plan, stick to the plan. And four, lifestyle changes are important. We saw that Brian wanted to take a pill and wanted to go a quick route. But lifestyle changes meaning watch your diet, make sure that you get enough sleep, and exercise is very important as well to staying healthy.
Thank you, Anita. If you have any comments about today's episode or you have suggestions for future episodes, please contact us. We'd love to hear from you. Go to our webpage at www.pearlsforsuccess.com.
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you can join us next time for another episode in which we will share pearls that will help you and your family.